I am free. You have seen my descent. Now watch me rise.
Welcome to the Citizens of the Globe podcast, where we not only embrace, but encourage change in our environment, in our bodies, in our minds, and in our souls. My name is Michael Maltez, and I aim to break down the borders we create in our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. We're back with another guest. This is my beautiful mom, Cynthia Maltez-Ortegaray. She is the perfect person to do a podcast episode with. One, because I think she has a lot of story behind her, and a lot of it has been suppressed throughout her entire life, and she has shared a lot with me. We recently just completed a road trip from San Diego, California to the middle of nowhere, Texas. We saw some sights that neither of us had ever seen. I think all the other road trips we've ever done were primarily just like driving through as quickly as we could, maybe stopping off the road like once or twice, but honestly not even sleeping for the night, just straight back and forth. So it was a different experience for both of us, and I really enjoyed it. And at the end of it, I wanted to get your perspective, and that's why I invited you on the podcast, because I learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about your relationship with, everybody else in your life, from your family, like your immediate family, to the family you started, and then your extended family and everything. And I think there's a lot that people can learn from your resiliency and how you have carried yourself throughout life. And so I want to give you the platform to share that with the world, because that's what this podcast is about, sharing our perspectives with the world to show that we are not alone and we are a lot more similar than we get led on to believe. So with that, how about you introduce yourself or anything that I left unsaid?
I am Cynthia Maltez. My maiden name is Ortegaray. I was born in Nicaragua, Masaya, Nicaragua, to be exactly, in 1968. So I am 53 years old.
Scorpio.
Oh, pure Scorpion.
So Nicaragua, if you didn't know, because a lot of people don't know, is a small country in Central America that has a pretty tumultuous history. It got kind of caught in the midst of the Cold War. So it was one of those proxy war countries where the U.S. invaded, not really because they had any issue with Nicaragua, but more so because they had interests in controlling the land that Nicaragua had. As you know, another Central American country that's very key to our global trade and economy is Panama. And what's in Panama? The Panama Canal. So in the 1980s, which when that was going on, you were how old?
I was 11 years old.
Okay. So when my mom was 11, the U.S. installed its own regime in Nicaragua, just like they have with other countries. And the purpose was to dethrone European and Russian interests in that region. With that came a lot of death, war. It became a sort of civil war because it wasn't the U.S. in there. It was U.S.-backed entities that were trying to gain control of the country. And that threw the civilians into this terrible state. And my mom has told me some stories, and it just blows my mind sometimes thinking about how exactly an 11-year-old even processes that. And so me thinking about the wars, that we have in the United States embarked on in my lifetime, it kind of grounds me in reality to think that my mom went through one of those wars. Like what happens in the Middle East today was happening to my very own mom. And that just blows my mind sometimes because, well, I'll let you tell some of the stories of what that was like.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I didn't want any of my kids to join the military, actually, because I was in a war. And I was, like he said, I was only 11 years old. And it was hard. It was hard to live that time of my life. I remember trying to hide the men of the house because the military will come to the houses and get all the men, no matter how old they were. They could be 10, 11, 12, old people, and they just wanted to join the military. And I remember one day we had to hide my grandfather, my father, some of my cousins, and roll them up into the cushions, and we all girls would sit on top of them. And the military got into the house, and they were all pointing guns in our heads, asking for the men. And that was bad. That was really bad because I thought they were going to take my dad. And for me and my dad at that time, it was everything. I had my dad like here. So it was a very tough moment of my life, having those things pointing in your head. But I lived through it. I remember also having families passing food through the backyard, sharing our food, so we could all have something to eat. We would share whatever the other families don't have. We would give, and that's how we lived too many months because it was months of war. But then after things calmed down a little bit, my family decided it was time for us to move out. And that's why we came to the United States in 1982.
Okay, so you were in the war for like 2 years?
2 years.
2 years in Nicaragua while it was going on. Yeah, okay. So what you're saying is you would, like in the couches, you would hide your...
Actually, it was the mattress.
Oh,
the
so
mattresses
like
of the bed. So we would roll them up and we would all sit on top of them. So that way
like when they came in. And you were a family of 7
It was
daughters?
5 girls. My mom, my grandma, my grandfather, and there were some other cousins at that time with us too. So it was probably, you could say maybe like around 15 or 20 girls maybe in the house.
Oh, okay.
So it was more of us trying to hide in my grandparents'
Mm-hmm. And during
house.
that time, like, did all the families, like the extended family, come together to like live in one place instead of being spread out all over the country?
Not so much. It was mainly the ones that we live close by.
Okay.
We have family live like probably like half an hour from where we used to live. So that's when we went at one point. We had to leave our house because we were getting bombed from, there is a place called Goyotepe in Nicaragua. It's like a big mountain. And the military were throwing bombs to Masaya. And a lot of those bombs hit my home. And there was a lot of destruction. So we have to move from there.
Y'all didn't have bomb shelters or anything, huh?
Actually, we did. We had to open a big hole in our backyard, and every time they would start bombing, that's where we used to hide. We used to get under and hide in those holes.
But like, you guys dug that?
We did. My grandfather, my dad, and they all dig that big hole to fit all of us. So it was a pretty big hole.
What was was there any like aid during that time? Did you have like any, because there was 2 opposing sides of the government. Did anybody come to like help you out, give you food or supplies or medical?
No.
So it was just...
until the war kind of like was a little down. That's when the Sandinistas, at that time, they were bringing trucks with bananas, with milk, things like rice to help the families. But it wasn't like during the whole war. It was more like when everything started settled down a little bit.
So the Sandinistas were the National Liberation Front, and they were a socialist political party. Okay. Do you remember? And then it was the Contra. Who was the opposing side? Do you know?
I don't know, because I was, like I said, I was only 11 years old. I know there was a thing called FPSLN.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those were, I think those are the Sandinistas, though.
Right.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, okay. So I just looked it up, and it was the Sandinistas, which were the socialists, which is the communism, Big Brother, that was the boogeyman of the Cold War. They were bad. in the eyes of the American capitalist society. And the U.S. backed the Contras, which were formed to overthrow the Sandinista government, to install, a more capitalistic society. And so you were saying the Sandinistas were the ones who came through and actually started helping
the families, giving food, giving water, milk. I remember bananas, rice. But it was a really hard time living through the war. It was nothing I wish to anybody. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they got very bad memories about the war. For me, I did try to, it was bad, but I tried not to define who I am. I just put it on back of my head. I still have memories, but I don't want those memories to try to stop me from doing things that I need to do in my life.
Like the resiliency piece that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. I think, as you'll see throughout this podcast, my mom has been through a tremendous amount of traumatic events in her life. And one thing I think I have taken from that, whether I knew it at the time, was this overwhelming sense of resiliency. Like no matter what happens, I will persevere, which isn't always the best way to go about things. Sometimes you need time to process, but the resiliency is the thing that keeps you going to get to those points where you can be okay and find space for yourself to process. And then just to kind of wrap up this, because my brain wanted to get some clarity. So Somoza was the leader of Nicaragua.
Yeah, that was the president.
Prior to the Sandinistas.
Yes.
And then the Sandinistas overthrew them, which were the socialist, oh my God, Red Big Brother, 1984, Communist Party. And did you like the time between the 79 and 80 before the war started?
I actually was a happy girl before the war started. I was happy. I didn't know too much about politics. I didn't know too much about, my thing was playing with my friends and all that. But at that time, I feel like when Somoza was the president, I had a good life. Like I never, but I never knew anything about politics at that age. So for me, I had happy times. It was all happy, and it didn't click to me that the Sandinistas were going to be still to this day in the throne right now, because it's bad. Nicaragua is a beautiful country, and they haven't done anything to help Nicaragua become a better place. And that's what I think the war was supposed to be, like for these people to bring Nicaragua up, and that didn't happen.
Yeah. So it's a little difficult, right? History is kind of blurred in this region, and there's a lot that went on from both sides. I'm not saying either one was, both were at war, and war is never a pretty thing. But from what I'm looking at, it seems like once the Sandinistas took over, they tried to install this communist or socialist regime, which could be beneficial. We've never seen a true socialist or communist, and those two words don't go hand in hand. Socialism is more of an ideology. Communism is an economic way of going about running things. So they're two different things, but it could have turned out to be a good thing. We don't know. Unfortunately, the whole war started to stop it from ever growing into anything. But what it seems like happened was, I'll just read directly from this source, and it's Wikipedia, so meh. But in 1986, the Contras were besieged by charges of corruption, human rights abuses, and military ineptitude. A much vaunted earlier 1986 offensive never materialized, and Contra forces were largely reduced to isolated acts of terrorism. In October 1987, however, the Contras staged a successful attack in southern Nicaragua. And it sounds like things ended around 1989 with some elections. So might have been democratic, but it didn't really seem that way. And it sounds like the majority of the Sandinistas were voted out. And it was more so this U.S.-backed government that took charge of Nicaragua. But I do know that there is still a lot of contention because as recently as 2019 or 2020?
I think 2019, I believe.
There was some...
Civil war.
Yeah, there was some human rights violations. There was like civil war. People were protesting in the streets. It's pretty bad out there. And I mean, that's an ongoing issue. So that just speaks volumes to how destabilized these countries get after these giant, you know, first world countries start to intervene in the smaller third world countries trying to install power, but then they just tear through a country and leave them essentially
Nothing happened.
aidless with nothing to rebuild, and so they're just destabilized. This is conspiracy, like obviously there's no basis, but from the outside looking in, it's almost like a manufactured state in which we destabilize smaller countries to prevent them from ever getting power to stay in power, like for us to stay in power. And that's like a very confusing thing in my head, actually. I said us because I grew up in America, but I do have this, like I'm a first generation American, so like I'm so close to the destabilization and the culture of Nicaragua. But yeah, it's a dichotomy in my brain, like I was, but going from that, yeah, that was a heavy subject to start off the podcast. But what I did want to ask was, do you know what your sisters, like how your sisters perceived that? Because you are the middle child of 5. So,
To tell you the truth, Michael, my sisters and me, we never talk about it. Like my family never talk about what happened. Like, when I was growing up, there was a lot of subjects that we're not supposed to talk about. Like, that's how I brought up. Like, not ask questions, don't get into conversations. So we never, now I'm 53 and I still haven't sit down with my sisters and we never talk about what happened. In that situation and in all the other situations. So to answer you that, mijo, no.
you don't really know. That's interesting because that's like a stark contrast to me. I'm like, let's talk about it all. There's like, let's put it all out there, you know, be vulnerable, let people in, you know, and the people can heal through that, you know. What do you think throughout life has helped you more, kind of suppressing all these things or
No, for me,
letting them out?
For me, it have helped me to speak now. But I did went to therapy, I'm going to tell you that. I did went to therapy from 2008 to 2019.
Shout out Jillian.
Yeah, Jillian. Oh my God, I wish I could still see her and talk to her. She helped me a lot to open up because I was a person that was I like to keep everything to myself. I never like to share nothing of my life with no friends, with nobody. It was keeping everything for myself. So she helped me to open up and reach out. She used to tell me, Cynthia, it is okay to ask for help. Cynthia, it's okay for telling people what you want to tell people. If people ask you questions, you don't have to tell them if you don't want to tell them. Just tell what you want to say. And that, now that I'm at this point of my life, it helped me to express myself better. And I'm sorry if I say something wrong. I don't speak English very good. Spanish is my first language. English is my second language. So I'm sorry if I say something wrong.
Don't
But,
sell yourself short. It's fine.
But that did help me. Going to therapy helped me a lot. I don't think I'll be able to be sitting here with you and talking and expressing myself if it wasn't for therapy, because like I say, I was always so into myself, keeping everything to myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, growing up with you, but also our dad, who went through that same war simultaneously, and then their love story is a little bit romantic and all that. They were in Nicaragua. They knew each other and
11
years old, and then they both moved and became refugees in America. And my mom went to the East Coast in Miami, and my dad went to San Francisco in the Bay Area in California. But somehow they got each other's numbers. They started talking. My mom dumped her boyfriend to be with him over a long distance relationship. They fell in love, and he flew out to see her in Miami. My mom was a senior in high school.
I was a senior, 17 years old.
Yep, and she got pregnant with my oldest brother, Marvin, as a senior. How was that? How was being a pregnant high schooler? Because
I always felt like I was ready. I was in love with your dad, like I say, since I was 11 when I got introduced by my cousin with him. And it was that, going back to the work a little bit, that was a sad part of my life, because 1982, that's when I left Nicaragua, and I met your dad in 1980. And when my parents decided to come to the United States, that was one of the sad things that I knew I wasn't going to see him anymore. And even that it was just a puppy love, it was somebody that for the first time I felt like cared about me. Because I felt like the ugly dog of the family. I never felt pretty. I never felt smart. So for him to look at me and see something in me
that you didn't see yourself,
that I didn't see myself exactly, that really captivated me. At 11 years old, two people meeting each other. So when they decided to move to the United States, he actually went to the airport the day that I was flying to the United States, and he was crying. And then we start keeping in touch. He would write me a letter. I still have that letter to this day. And it was nice. It was nice that after 4 years of not seeing each other, we got reconnected. And we did get married. In 1987, we did get married. Like you say, I got pregnant. Being pregnant at 17.
Pregnant first, then married.
First time married.
The way the Catholic Church intended?
No, not really. My mom wasn't happy. My dad wasn't happy about it. But I knew that I commit myself to something, and I took that very serious. Even that when I let your dad know that I was pregnant, I already decided, if he doesn't want nothing to do with the baby, I still was going to keep the baby. In my mind, never crossed my mind that I was going to have an abortion. That always, I knew I was prepared to be a mother. I don't know, don't ask me why, but I knew that I already have fun with my friends. I used to go out clubbing. I used to dance a lot. So I thought at 17 I had a good life, and I was enjoying being pregnant.
You wanted to start a family?
Yeah, I felt ready. I knew I was able to do it. I knew I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
It was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard, especially coming from Miami to California, not speaking English, because let me tell you, when I came from Nicaragua, I went to school from 4th grade to high school. And for me, it was hard to learn how to speak English, because in Miami, the schools, everybody speaks Spanish. So yes, I did learn how to write very good English. I did learn how to read, but speak, it was so hard. So when I got married and came to California, I remember I got a job, and there was this American woman she was my manager, and every time that I would say something wrong, she would go, Cynthia, no, you don't say it like that. You say it this way. And she taught me a lot. Instead of laughing, because a lot of people laugh when you say something wrong, she will actually correct me. And that was really nice of her. So I did learn how to speak. Like I say, I don't speak it perfectly, but I think I make myself understand. And that...
I think you speak really good English, and I think you actually have a skill that not a lot of people possess, because not only can you speak basic English, but you have told me that you also go and find the words to kind of help you say things better. So instead of just relying on the basics and just repeating the same words over and over again, sometimes you go and Google synonyms to help
I do that
describe what you're trying to say better. And so I think you actually speak English very well, and sometimes in some ways better than the American population who just, resort to, the easy language, the easy available language. But so after you got pregnant, you didn't finish high school.
I did not finish high school. It was actually my last year. I was in 12th grade when I decided that I was going to get married because I did get pregnant. And I was supposed to finish in California, but I didn't want to go to school pregnant.
Yeah, so you once you found out you guys were pregnant, you got married, you moved together with my dad and his family in California. I'm sure your parents were very happy about that.
At the beginning, they were not happy. I'm not going to lie, especially my dad. My dad wasn't happy at all. But then they start liking your dad. Actually, my mom used to talk to my mom more than I used to talk to her on the phone. So they had a really good relationship, my mom and your dad.
I didn't know that.
They were very, very close, actually. The family after that was happy. They were happy for me. It was hard for me because I didn't have nobody in California. I was by myself. No friends, no family. So I had to learn how to do everything on my own.
Grew up in that big family, and then just kind of... My dad's family is pretty small comparative. It's just...
To my family. I have a big, huge family. Believe me, I still have cousins that I don't even know.
But my dad is one of two, whereas my mom was one of five. So.
One of five, and then I got a lot of girls, cousins, and men. So my family is a big family. My grandmother had 14 kids.
So a very big adjustment, and you always felt like very isolated out there. I know you talked about, with me personally, you've talked about your relationship with my dad's mother, your mother-in-law, and that not being a very good relationship ever, not really having so much support. In fact, I know the most support that you've told me you got was from my grandpa on my dad's side, your father-in-law, which I can attest to. That man is a very peaceful man, and I commend him for living the life he lives and being a rock in a very tumultuous family. But yeah, so you were in California. You had my oldest brother, Marvin. Then a year later, you had my second oldest brother, Marcin. 4 years later, 1993. You had Cynthia, my sister. You had a miscarriage in between then, right?
Yes, before Cynthia, I had a miscarriage.
With little Marvina.
Probably. She probably hate me by now.
So my parents were really creative with names. My dad's name is Marvin, and they named their firstborn son Marvin. Their second son is Marcin. Marvin and Cynthia put together. Super creative.
Mar from Marvin and Sin from Cynthia. Marcin.
And so naturally their first girl was named Cynthia.
Yes.
And then 6 years later, after a lot of tumultuous family raising and marriage, some of the things that happened in their childhood, and my siblings' childhood, obviously scarred them for life, like a lot of the physical abuse and the verbal abuse and seeing the fights and everything, and the way dad treated you and the way you treated him in return. I know that scarred them. And you guys were on the verge of separating in
1987.
87.
1987, we were not doing that great. We already have like prior years before separation in between. But in 1987, we were having really rough time.
Mm-hmm. The separations were because of cheating, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first one was, I think it was 1995. That was the first time that I know. And I did left for a month.
You took the kids to Miami.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Took Marcin, and Cynthia to Miami, Florida. Lived there for a month until your dad and me, we start talking again. Decide to go back again did a lot of talking, forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And we were having a pretty good years. We grew up from that. And there were good things, bad things in between. But then he started drinking a lot. Mm. And things were going downhill again. And
yeah.
That's when, in 1987, that's when things got worse. And
it kind of continued into 98,
some
99.
days good, sometimes years good, bad, and
like purgatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's because me, studying psychology, making hindsight, conclusion. I don't think you guys ever addressed the foundational issues that you guys were facing. The lack of support and the lack of knowledge in the time. These things weren't talked about, mental health and that. And,
therapy wasn't. If you go to therapy in those years, you were crazy. Nobody thought about going to therapy was for something else. Everybody would thought that it's because you were crazy. So that wasn't something that will be addressed or anything in any conversation. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I think between your dad and me happened, it was a lot of communication problems. Mm-hmm. I did shut down all the time because for me, I thought, and this I'm talking before I used to go to therapy, I thought for me to stay quiet meaning that I wasn't getting to a big argument, in a big fight, so I decided for myself to stay quiet so things wouldn't explode.
To keep the peace.
Yes.
But it wasn't peaceful inside of you.
But me, I was like in a war inside myself. Mm-hmm. But for me, at that time, that's what I thought it was the best thing to do. And now I understand it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right thing to do.
Absolutely. I
learned that I needed to say what I needed to say, even that the other person don't like it. But at that time, I was afraid to, that if I say something, it was going to be bad. So,
because it was. It was turning into, like, every conversation was turning into an explosion, from what I understand.
And it was like walking on eggshells all the time. It was like...
That's a very key word.
Like, I didn't know if...
Or a key phrase.
There were times where I would say or think, I'm going to tell him this, and then I decide, no, I'm not going to say it because I don't know how he's going to react, and then I don't want, that commotion again. So I was always a quiet person until I went to therapy and learned how to speak.
In 2008, so another 10 years later. Yeah, so 1997.
We got married by church.
No, but 97 is when things started turning sour. Dad started drinking again.
Yes.
And, or did he just start drinking for the first time?
No, he started drinking.
Even before that?
Even before that, he started drinking.
But it picked up again, 97.
It was on and off all the time.
And then you guys were on the verge of separation, but you, as very tumultuous, toxic relationships go, you guys were using sex to mellow things out. Mm-hmm. And you guys got pregnant again with me in 99. I was born on March 2nd. And my mom always said that, like, I saved their marriage, which, one, just looking back as an adult, that put a lot of pressure on me. And I see that in myself, I started repeating a lot of the cycles that you were in turn repeating from probably what your mom, my grandma, like what she was doing. She was keeping the peace probably a lot of the time, hiding a lot of things and just ignoring it. So you repeated that cycle, and then me in my own life, I repeated that cycle. But I also repeated, my dad's cycle, and I cheated on my ex, and I completely understand what all went into that. And so I have a lot of compassion for Dad, because I don't think he ever had the tools necessary for him to process, the trauma of the relationship dynamic between him and his mom, and, feeling like the forgotten child of two, and then the whole war, how that impacted him. I'm just very understanding that those things played a huge factor in the way that he chose to cope with it later in life. And unfortunately, that scarred you, and unfortunately, my actions scarred my ex, and I'm very, very, very sorry. And I'm very grateful that my ex is able to understand and hear me out and forgive me for the trauma that I put on her. But it's an evolutionary cycle, and I truly do believe that with enough love and compassion and hard work and the willingness to work, that Dad will eventually be able to get there. But I mean, that's his choice. It's always his choice, and it's always your choice. And it was my choice to do better and bring those dark parts of ourselves to the forefront of our brain, to not fear them, but to grow from them. And yeah, that's kind of how I see that situation from my perspective of how I've lived life. Just a lot of cycles of trauma just being repeated, and you have to be the one to stop it. And it doesn't matter if you're 53 or 23.
It doesn't matter.
It just, when do you want to stop that cycle for yourself, and then for the generations after you? It's just a choice, and it's a lot less scary than you think, because once you embark on the journey to bring everything that you've been holding down to the forefront of your consciousness, it's less scary. Like, for example, this podcast, I bet you were a little scared.
I'm still scary.
Right, but you were like nervous. You were like, how is people going to like think about my voice? How are people going to perceive me? This and that. But like, now we're here and we're in the middle of this thing, and it's like
like a regular conversation that, like, we do have a lot of conversations, Michael. And this is how I feel whenever I talk to you. I feel like I don't have to hide anything. We just two people talking about our experience and to help each other. Because I'm going to correct you on one thing. Remember, you just say in 1997, you were born in 1999.
Yeah.
In 1997, when we decided to get married by church, I used to tell you that you were my angel child. Not that you saved for marriage.
Okay.
It's that you were my angel child, because
Yeah,
you were, God brought you to me, and that's why I call you my angel child. And
like
that's
when you weren't expecting.
When I wasn't expecting to get pregnant, but it wasn't because to save my marriage. It was because I felt like God sent you, and you are very lovely, and you like to listen and like to help other people, and that's something that not too many people have in themselves. You always put yourself in somebody else's shoes before you speak, and that's something that a lot of people need to do, because I know I have a lot of friends and people that know me, and they talk about me sometimes, and it's hard to hear that, because nobody is being in my shoes. Nobody knows what I went through. And it's very easy for people to judge you, and they shouldn't judge nobody. I learned, and that's one thing that I don't do with people. I don't judge people, and that's why I open up, and people open up to me a lot, because when you speak to me, I'm not judging you. I'm listening to you. And that's something a lot of people need to learn how to do. Instead of accusing you and judging you, first know what the other person went through.
Mm.
Like now I learned also that a lot of the things that went wrong in my marriage, it wasn't only because of your dad.
No.
I learned that there was a lot of stuff that I did wrong too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a human. I'm not perfect. A lot of my friends and people used to tell me that I was an angel because I put up with a lot of things with your dad. But I'm not an angel. I made mistakes. But I learned from those mistakes. One thing I talked to you during this road trip was that I was here for a purpose. And you know how everybody said that we are here for a purpose? Well, I learned what that purpose was. Mm-hmm. The purpose of me being here was for me to learn not to be abused verbally, sexually, not to be abused by anybody. That's why my purpose in life is here. And now I understand. And now this Cynthia is a different Cynthia. This Cynthia is a Cynthia that loves herself mm-hmm. before loving anybody else. Even I used to put my life before, after you, Marvin, Cynthia, Marcin, your dad. Now it's Cynthia. Cynthia is first because I learned that I needed to take care of myself for me to be able to love anybody else and to take care of anybody else. If I didn't take care of myself, I wasn't able to take care of nobody else. So this, going to therapy though, that what helped me find that Cynthia.
Yeah.
Going to therapy helped me to be the woman I am now.
And I will always preach the graces of therapy because I don't think I would be here sitting in front of you having this conversation and, you know, sharing it with the world if it wasn't for therapy myself, because I very much also had that mindset that you were speaking on where it was, you know, nobody knows what I'm going through because I don't share it with them. And the reason I didn't share it with them and the friends that I had and the people was because I felt like I didn't need to. Like, if I could process it on my own, if I could make my way through it just like I had everything else in my life, what's the point of talking about it? What good is it going to do but stress another person out? I think that's what therapy taught me, you know. One, that human connection is the most important thing here in this world, and that's why we, instead of being one conglomerate mind, unimind kind of being, we are all separate beings to share our perspective, our different perspectives of the whole world with each other. So human connection was important. Now I needed to know how to form genuine and peaceful human connection, how to make it not this toxic cycle, how to put all the tools together to, you know, communicate the things that I need and communicate my traumas and be honest with somebody without fearing that they're going to judge me. But the only way you do that is you have to be vulnerable. And I think that's one thing that you've been learning and sharing, and that's why you're here on this podcast right now, sharing like your life and your traumas, because being vulnerable gives you that power. It takes the power and the fear away from it and allows you to create those connections that you're looking for, you know, and kind of move past those toxic friends that you're talking about and move past those toxic relationships, romantic or whatever, and allow you to create the life that you want. And that's one thing that I have on this road trip and throughout the 3 years that you've, you know, been processing your divorce. It's that I'm helping and hoping, and then you've asked me, like, or told me that you want these pushes and pushing you towards opening up and finding your voice, because you've had your voice suppressed throughout your entire life. And that's a result of your family dynamics, but also the overarching, like, Latino culture. It's very, you know, don't answer the door. Don't talk to anybody about this. You know I just beat your ass, but you better not fucking tell anybody about a single thing. You know, like, we've had CPS called on us, and, you know, you used to tell all of us, you know, like, be quiet, don't say nothing. And, you know, me and Cynthia and you were having that conversation at that dinner table right there. And as an adult, I as a kid, I was scared to be taken away from my parents. That's the only world that I knew. As an adult, I see that probably we should have been taken away from our parents. And we looked up the statistics, 100% of the time we were getting abused at the house. We were getting hit. We were getting, Cynthia, I think, had the worst of it, in my opinion. And, what we were observing between you and Dad and those, sometimes physical fights, and then me later in life having to actually physically restrain Dad from hitting you and pulling him down to the ground. Like, those things
They're not okay.
were not okay, and we probably should have been taken. But that overarching Latino culture, it's so normalized. It's so, just shove everything under the rug. I know you just got your ass beat, but we're still going to fucking Easter and spending time with the whole family and going to go to church and sit in that pew and pray to God for forgiveness. And, but it's, I don't know. Anyways.
And that's one of the things that I think it kind of like, you just say a word right now, and I say to myself, sometimes I was pretending.
Yeah.
I was pretending all the time that I was happy, that my family was okay, and we were not okay.
No.
I learned that we were not okay.
No.
Maybe I told you the other day that I should have probably ended my marriage long time ago. But I didn't want to take that and say it myself. So I allowed somebody else to say it to me. Let's get separated. Let's get divorced. And it was because I was afraid of saying the words.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened 3 years ago, and I felt like my world was ending. I felt like my whole world that my life was ending at that day.
It was.
And I think it ended for a moment. It took me months to recuperate. But one thing that I learned, and I got that very present in my life, it was that I wasn't the only person getting divorced, and other people were going through worse things. That day that I was driving, crying in the morning, going to work, but I was like, man, I was crying that morning. But then I started listening and seeing this news about Guatemala, where the volcano erupted and people were getting burned. And that day, something clicked in my mind. I say
2018?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that day, something said to me, Cynthia, wake up, stop crying. What's happening to you, a divorce, is nothing compared to what these people are going through. Look at them. And I look at them, and it was sad to see all those people getting burned. And that day was the last day that I stopped crying. And I say, that's it. I'm going to get up. I'm going to start getting better. And I did. And I'm sitting down here with you, mijo. Mm-hmm. And these are tears, but these are tears of me knowing that I did it.
Yeah. It's you're proud of yourself.
That I'm really proud that I made it.
Yeah.
But that day kind of like did it for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm here, and I'm okay. I'm 53. I never said that I was going to be a happy woman. I'm financially doing much better than when I was married all those years. I'm taking care of myself, and I'm speaking up. That's a huge one for me, speaking up, be able to speak.
You're finding your voice.
Yes.
I think you found a huge portion of your voice. There's a lot more confidence in when you speak, and the knowledge and the power that you have. I know that, I mean, I've experienced this personally. Like, sometimes you have this imposter syndrome, like, I don't know any better than anybody else. But sitting here observing you, and, you said that, like, all those things about me, how I've been a pretty upstanding, human. I've made mistakes myself, so I'm not a messiah. But I have made the changes in my life to live in accordance with my values, and my values have shifted to peace. The overall encompassing word is peace. And respect for all humans. The foundation was built, I will attribute it to you and the way that you raised me. We had a very close relationship growing up, and so a lot of the models that I used in adulthood were based on you. Work ethic. You and my dad owned a business, and I know I saw you right there, hand in hand with dad, picking up the carpet, installing it, removing it, cleaning it, managing the business and the financials of all of that. It blew up on us in the end, but I saw you, and the work ethic you put in. Also raising 4 children. I got a lot of everything from you, and so I admire you, and I recognize that I'm not completely, this isn't original. This comes from you, 1, through our DNA, but 2, also through what you've taught me about resiliency. I know you touched on it a little bit, but I would like to give you the opportunity to be honest and explore and share with the world what happened when you were a child in Nicaragua, and then also what we uncovered on the road trip with the doctor. I think it's a perspective that might help demystify the events. And so if you are comfortable, go ahead, but if not, no worries.
Well, Michael's talking about, this is something that I shared at one point with my ex-husband. He was the first person that I shared this information with. And then later on in life, I shared it with all of you guys. Like right now, when you guys are adults, that's when I start sharing it with you guys. And I did share it with one cousin. And it was, I think I was like around 8 years old that I remember. I didn't know until I was 16, 17 that it was something that it wasn't okay. Something that I didn't know it was wrong at that age. But I went through abuse. A family member sexual abused me. That I recall, I was 8 years old. I don't know if it happened before, but that's when my memory, I start thinking about it.
Yeah. The thing that always sticks out in my brain is the fact that, as an adult, you've always felt this overwhelming need to stay quiet and not talk about, your issues and keep the peace. And I know I've talked about with you with this. Do you feel like the fact that that family member would tell you not to tell anybody and would put that in your brain, and so then you wouldn't tell anybody, do you think that kind of impacted how you think?
It did. For a long time, he used to tell me, this is only between you and me. Don't say anything. And I thought it was nothing wrong at that time. Like I said, I was 8 years old when I remember. But I don't know if it happened before I was 8. I don't know. That's where my brain goes, 8 years old.
Yeah, the brain will block out a lot of memories to process trauma.
And I know probably stopped when I left and came to the United States because I was 11. But I didn't talk about it with nobody. And this is probably the first time that my sisters and my mom, my dad will hear about it because I never told them. I don't feel like I had to put them in through a pain because that didn't define me. That didn't stop me for me to look for love or be with someone sexually. That didn't stop me. I didn't want him to have that power on me and affect me because I wanted to have my own life. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to do my own thing. So I didn't want to give that power to that person of keeping me down. And but it did kind of like scarred me for a little bit because, like I say, I still haven't told my mom and my dad, and I don't want to say who it was, but it was very close family member. But that pain I didn't want to give to my mom and my dad because I know they're going to be hurt. But I don't know if they would believe me at that time either. I don't know if they would believe me that if I would have told them.
And that's that toxic culture.
Because then, like 3 years ago, I did talk to a cousin. I don't want to say name either. And she also experienced something. And it was also with a family member close. And it scarred her really bad. And we shared both of our experience, and I think she got more scarred than I did. But it's bad that we don't talk about this. Like my generation, at least, or my mom's generation, maybe. We don't talk about this. I had a cousin also that I was probably between 8 and 11 when we used to pass by the room because we had to pass through his room to go to the bathroom and go to the kitchen. And he would have the door open and he would show us his private parts. So that, at that time, also,
told me that.
yeah, I didn't tell you about that one. I remember. And it's also close family member.
And that's sexual abuse and sexual trauma. And I know you said it affected you a little bit, and I'm not trying to take your power away, but I think it's affected you in your entire life.
It did. Actually, I don't want to say
does.
It still does to this moment because I don't know if my sisters were abused either because we don't talk about it. We haven't talked about it. Or at least they don't want to be that open with me to say anything.
Which is why I'm so adamant about being vulnerable, because having the courage to talk about this thing with one person sparks the courage in another person and another person. And then we take all these terrible boogeymen out of the shadows and we start pointing them out. Like, you know what? Maybe somebody listens to this, going through a situation that you were going through. And they have the courage now to point out that family member as the situation is happening, or whoever their abuser is. And it saves them so many years of trauma. And you can help them figure out what it took you 53 years to learn in less time, I think that's what this is all about. And I'm not preying on your trauma or anything. I'm hoping that through your disclosure, you can build deeper connections with your family and your mom and your dad, because none of this stuff really is as bad as our head makes it seem. It is terrible that you went through these things, and I'm so sorry that you went through those things. But what you were speaking on and not letting it keep you down, that's the resiliency piece. I think you have a gift and you can teach that to people, because like you said, your cousin went through similar things and it kept your cousin down. And so how do you translate that? If you have words to translate that to somebody to help them pick themselves up out of that situation, what would it be? Like, what did you do?
I don't know what I did. I just know that I always had this on me that I never want to feel sorry for myself. I never want to, because that I think is bad. If you feel sorry for yourself, then you're in a hole. Get out of that hole. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Just think about the positive things, what comes from the bad things. That's what I always do. Like in any situation, if I'm in a bad situation, I say, okay, this happened because of a reason. So don't get mad. Forget about it, and just try to look at it in another way. So all the negative things, I always try to put them into a positive thing instead of like being into that negative situation all the time, because I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace with myself. And to be at peace with myself, I have to learn how to forgive people sometimes for what they do. even that they don't deserve it or they don't. But by me forgiving those people gives me peace. It's not that I forget about those situations. It's that I don't want to keep bringing them in all the time, because otherwise I'm going to be stuck. And I don't want to be stuck. I want to be free. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I want to be free. And that's what I feel now. I feel like I'm free and I have peace of mind now.
Do you forgive your abuser?
You know what? I'm nobody to forgive anybody. I'm just Cynthia. If somebody needs to forgive them, it's themselves, I think. They have to forgive themselves for what they do. I could just forgive me.
For the way you acted in the situation, for holding it in, and give yourself compassion.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
But it's hard to forget it. It's always going to be in your mind.
Oh yeah, it's going to stick with you for the rest of your life, Mom. And I'm sorry, and that's what hurts me, and that's what hurts me. As I talk to more people and open up with them, like, this isn't something that is isolated. It's not one person.
No, it happens more than what you think, and that's one reason why when I have a daughter, and I told her the other day that I knew that you were mad at me all the time for not letting you sleep at anybody's house. But that was the reason why, because on the back of my head, I thought that somebody could touch her, somebody could do something to her.
And you're absolutely right, because that shit happens.
And like I say, it doesn't happen only outside your house. It happens inside your house. So that's something that we need to start talking about, because it happened more than what we think.
Yeah, and drawing on, the episode I did with Orion, I think I admire the way he processed it, because he said, I was sexually abused as, a 7-year-old, and she was older than me. But he says, what was she going through, And I think that's a very key thing, to dive into the brain of
the other person, these aggressors, the abusers, the people who, go out and shoot schools up. I think, as a person who studies psychology and wants to progress in the field, it's important to put myself in their shoes and understand the dynamics of their life that led them to do that and put that trauma onto you. Because whatever he's dealing with in his mind, he put that all on you. And now it was your burden to carry. And what I've understood is that instead of carrying it, instead of holding it in you and putting that onto other people, you've done your best to end that cycle with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm very proud of you for that. And I'm sure there's more things in your life that happened along those lines, because, this kind of toxic male culture where men think that they have some right over a woman's body. They objectify a woman and they see them as this object that they can obtain and can control and do these things. It's not okay. And I'm sorry, and I'm proud of where you are today, and that you're able to sit here and talk about these things and share them with people, because it's a pretty courageous thing to do, and thank you for sharing it. I wish, the reason why I share this with all of you guys is because I think I could help a little bit. Someone, somewhere, like, to speak up. There was another episode that I told you when we were on a road trip that I never discussed this with, not even your dad. Mm-hmm. Like, that was something that I kept to myself. Yeah. But not because I felt ashamed of it. It's just something that I don't know.
In the grand scheme of all the trauma that you've been through in your life, I don't think your brain even saw it as like,
it was that bad. Like, I don't thought it was that bad. That's maybe where my brain went. Mm-hmm. When I was 15, like I say, I've always felt like the ugly dog. And I have a deformation, like when my chin wasn't growing. It was like a 7-year-old at 15. and my tooth on the top were coming out. So I went to, my mom, my dad, they paid a doctor to fix me because they knew I wasn't happy with myself. It was considered a cosmetic surgery at that time, so they had to come money from their pocket.
Right.
This doctor in Florida performed a surgery where I thought he was like the best thing that happened to me. Like, he gave me my life back.
He
like
helped you see what you saw in yourself.
Like he helped me feel beautiful because I didn't feel beautiful at 15. And I wait a lot of times to see him because he needed to take picture of me, like in every angle, everything. Like every 2 weeks probably I would go see him so he could take measurements of the thing, because I have to put braces before they do the surgery, which was an 11-hour surgery. And then I had to keep my mouth closed for 3 months. When he finally saw the result of what he did, which I think he did a great job, one day I remember going to see him, and he did try to kiss me. And at that time, I thought to myself, I'm 15 already. I know what's going on. So I pushed him, and I got out of the room. But I know that wasn't right. At that time, I understand that was abuse.
Yeah. And then you probably put that in context with everything that happened when you were 8. And did you feel any victimhood? Like, you were like, why is this happening to me?
At that time, no, Michael. No, I didn't feel like that.
You had the strength.
Yeah, at that time, I didn't thought that wasn't as bad as what happened when I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. So for me, him trying to kiss, I didn't see it as a really bad abuse. I knew he was older than me. He was my doctor. I know he was wrong, but I didn't want to go back and see him again. But I never told my mom. I never told nobody. I just didn't want to keep seeing him. But I think on his mind, he created this face.
Right.
And in his mind, he thought that he could do whatever he wanted. And I don't know if he did anything while I was unconscious or whatever. I hope he didn't, but that I never will know.
That's especially unfortunate. It's unfortunate in any situation, but because that person was in a position of power, and he preys probably not only on you, but like on other patients of his. It's disturbing, because how do you trust anybody after that? How have you trusted people after that? Because personally, I've never gone through anything in the realm of sexual abuse. There was one incident, but I don't consider it sexual abuse. It was a problem with consent that was handled amicably.
I think you have to trust people.
But how?
You cannot. What one person did, you cannot say that other person's going to do it. So you have to be able to trust at one point. Not 100%. You go in with your feet one in, one out. But that's the only way you're going to find out if you could trust people, because otherwise you will never trust anybody.
I agree completely. I agree. No matter how much trauma you go through, I think the one thing, and this is the key to resiliency, is that you have to keep putting yourself out there. Do it smarter, like you said. 1 foot in, test the waters.
I do
keep the knowledge in your head, but, you have to keep trying. One thing I don't think I've ever asked you is, do you feel like you were ever sexually abused or taken advantage of in the relationship with my father?
I probably was. I'm not going to deny that. Because every time we have an argument, every time we'll end with sex. So I say we did. There was some abuse.
Manipulation and coercion, like times you didn't want to. And
yeah, a lot.
And that's I think a under-discussed area of sexual abuse in the marriage or in relationships, because one, the overarching culture that is put onto men and we need to change is that we are supposed to chase a woman and convince them to sleep with us and, you know, have our child. It's like this, it's like we consider ourselves peacocks who have to dance and frickin' woo a woman, which I think is a culture that we need to do away with. But once we are in a relationship with a woman, in the male perspective, a lot of the time, men feel like they have some, again, right over a woman's body. And I've never had that exact train of thought for myself, but in my actions, you know, maybe I do this whole grand gesture of setting up a thing, and then I'm like, okay, like, well, I mean, hopefully this leads to sex. And that was something that I struggled with for a long time and have now overcome, you know, to the point where I have so much control over my impulses that I can stop dead in the middle of sex and realize, like, if this person isn't enjoying it and they don't want it anymore, like, let's stop. Because it is all about consent and it's not about forcing. And I know you've talked to me, like, you weren't even having sex to enjoy it anymore. It was to almost manipulate dad back into staying in a relationship with you. That was what you had to hold him there. And I mean,
and it was bad.
It was toxic.
It was bad because I was being vulnerable. I wanted to keep my marriage. So at that point, I was doing everything that I knew to that point that it would help me keep him there until, like, again, therapy comes back again. I remember him telling me that it was just sex. And one day he said, this is going to be the last time. And I was devastated. And I talked to Jillian. And she told me that I had the power. That I could say when I wanted to say, that's the last day. That's no more. And I did that. And it made me feel good. That I was able to say, no more. That's it. And I felt proud of myself. I felt empowered. I felt like, oh,
because you had that, you had that control, and it wasn't just like your impulses.
I stopped having somebody controlling me. I control myself, and that felt good. That felt really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because you know, even some of the things that I saw as a kid growing up and like the way you and dad interacted, it was clear to me as a kid like that wasn't okay. And yeah, looking back, a lot of the times I do wish that one of us spoke up against it, and I wish we had more resources. I think,
but it's never too late, mijo.
It's never too late. No.
It's never too late, and we're learning. I think you guys are doing great. I think I'm doing good in my part. And at 53, I feel better than ever. Like
You're flourishing.
I feel like it's a new life, like, for me. I don't need to have a man with me. I feel like, not that I'm saying that I don't want to, it's just that I don't feel the need to have somebody next to me all the time. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's how I feel now. If I have it, good, but if I don't have it, I'm okay too. And that comes from me learning more about myself, me wanting to do better. Talking to you guys about a lot of subjects that they're hard. Sometimes they're hard. A lot of people may think that you guys are so, like, how do you say, like, you guys don't tell me anything when I'm wrong.
Oh yeah. You don't think that we just like are cuddling you?
Yeah, no. And
you got that from your sisters?
That's from everybody. Friends, everybody thinks that you guys don't put me on my, I'm telling you,
No,
all of them.
Absolutely.
Even me going through the divorce, they're being tough with me.
Yeah, the tough talks. One thing that's interesting, I was talking about this with Cynthia, is it's almost like it's flipped in a way, Mom, where we as the kids have become your parent in some ways. You know, I'm not taking your like autonomy away as an adult, but I realize how much of your childhood was stripped from you, and how you have, even more than us, never had a chance to learn and grow. And so you guys provided us with a lot of trauma, but a lot of opportunity, especially just living here in America. We had a lot of opportunity, and we have been able to grow up, I think, a lot quicker than you have, and learn the lessons that we've had to without being stunted in the ways that you have.
And try not to make the same mistakes that that and me we made. Like, and I think that you guys are doing great. Like,
do you feel that reversal? Do you feel like sometimes like we're teaching you?
You, in a way, you guys are. Like, you financially, you guys are the one who teach me how to handle my financials better.
Yeah, I gotta keep working on that.
I still gotta work on that. Still gotta get a push on that. But I know, but that's a push that you guys like inject me all the time. Like, you remind me of when I'm going down. You guys remind me to go up again on that part. But like, talking about anything with you guys is like, I wish more people be more sincere and more open in talking about subjects that are hard with the kids, because I feel like with you guys, we always addressing all these issues.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you guys are becoming better people now and trying to resolve things in a different way that when I was you guys' age. Like, probably a long time ago, you asked me, I probably would have got divorced a long time ago. And maybe
if you had this mindset.
If I had this mindset that I am
you
right
had the
now.
tools you had now.
But you know what? Things happen for a reason. I learned. Like I say, I was in this life for a purpose, and I think I learned my purpose.
Absolutely.
And that's all I could do, just keep going.
Yeah, one thing I heard by a creator on TikTok, he said something amazing, and I love it. He's like, you will meet the same person in a different body over and over and over again until you learn your lesson. And I mean,
we talk about it on the trip.
Yeah.
I think I finally learned,
because you can see the signs now in another person before you.
Yes, that's something that I kept into my mind the whole trip. Like, that has to be my purpose. Learn that you cannot be abused. Learn that you could get out of a relationship if things are not going well. But I stayed in my relationship because, like I told you the other day, a lot of people think that I stayed because of all of you guys, because of my kid. And I could tell everybody, and this is me. I did love you, Dad. And I think those kind of love are very rare. And I don't think nobody or anybody gonna love him the way I did. I don't have nothing against him. I wish him nothing but the best.
That's all you can do.
I did tell you guys one time that maybe it wasn't what he wanted. I told you guys that it was what Cynthia wanted. Cynthia wanted that relationship. Cynthia wanted to stay married because that's how I brought him. Like, I told you that I take my vows very serious. And I always thought that I was going to be with him till I die.
Till death do us part.
But it's because of that. I hold on to that very hard. But I did love you, Dad. And no,
I don't think he denies that. I don't think he, in one sense of his head, I don't think he can ever even say that.
But I never stayed with him because of you guys. I stayed with him because of love.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to fight for that love.
It's just unfortunate you guys couldn't find a healthy way to express that love. And that's okay. Because I see, we always said that in hindsight, we feel like you guys would have been, even in the moment, we told you guys, like when we were kids, that you guys would be better off if you separated and got divorced. Maybe you guys wouldn't have been so toxic. Maybe that wouldn't have impacted our relationship with, our father as much. But hey, you guys, I think both of you guys are becoming better people apart from each other. And that's one thing that in me and my, the end of my marriage, I'm learning that we are better people apart, and we have found a way to still cultivate love for each other with boundaries. So I definitely think that it's not a terrible thing that you guys got divorced. It was the end of a version of your life, but you are creating a new version for your life, and I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
And I'm really proud of my dad too. I know he's still on his journey, but everybody in their own time, when they want to choose to learn their lessons, they'll learn them.
I choose to learn mine. I think I was tired of not learning, of not finding what my purpose was in life, and I think I finally did.
That's good. And we'll see if you get reincarnated on this next one.
No more. I don't want to suffer again. Enough suffering. No more suffering. I want to be happy. I want peace.
You gotta choose it.
And I think
stop working for DoorDash.
I will, mijo. I promise I will.
Yeah, if you see my mom out there delivering your food, give her a good tip so she can save up some money and start her journey, whatever that is.
The reason why I do it is because I love driving.
Okay, go become a trucker. No, okay. Well, Mom, we've been going for an hour and 21. I think this is a good point to end the podcast. I appreciate your vulnerability and everything that you've shared with everyone. I've learned a lot from you throughout life, and I know Father's Day is coming up, but I've always said that you and Cynthia have raised me more than my dad did. And so even in another way, like this Father's Day is dedicated to you guys, because in so many ways you guys have stepped up as men. My sister being a single mom, essentially all of 4 of her kids' entire life, due to circumstances. But I really respect you guys. You guys are the epitome of what it is to be a woman, from the trauma that you guys experience to the resiliency that you guys have. And I respect you a lot. I have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you, mijo.
Thank you for coming on. And
I love you.
I love you too, Mom.
I love you, Cynthia, Marvin, and all my girls. 7 girls. And I'm very proud to be a grandma of 7 beautiful girls.
Yeah, they are crazy. But they are beautiful.
It was nice talking to you, mijo.
It was really nice. I think if you don't have any other thoughts, then I'll close it out. All right. Thank you for joining us on this little journey. I hope you learned something and can take away some lessons, some painful lessons that my mom has had to learn in life, and apply it to your situations, however that fits. And at the end of every day, and at the end of every podcast, I would just like to remind you that you have the power to create the day and the world and the life that you want. So I hope that you continue to do that.